I'm sorry, everybody. Apparently, I was talking for 2 minutes without sound. My mic was muted, and it's never muted. So let's start this all over. Welcome, everybody, to Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, Tony Defio, and thank you, as always, for joining me. It's probably a good thing that those first 2 minutes were muted because I was fumbling like I always am. But now that was my rehearsal. But if you're watching live on YouTube and Facebook, you saw me stammering for about 2 minutes, but there was no sound, so it's a good thing for that. But thank you for joining me. And we have lots of live shows you can watch on those two platforms. There's this show. There's The Hangover every Monday. There's The Curtain Call every Wednesday. There's Steelers Preview with Jeff Hartman, Dave Schofield, Brian Anthony Davis. That's every Thursday. There is The Curtain Call. As I said, The Curtain Call, it's Wednesday already. There's the Scobro Show. I'm sorry, The Scobro Show with Dave Schofield and his brother Rich. That's Tuesday nights. So we have, and you can catch those live shows on any audio platform. iHeartRadio is my platform of preference. You can catch all those live shows. You can as downloads on an audio platform after the fact. So if you're listening on Saturday or Sunday, I hope you're doing well. But we have audio exclusive shows too, such as the Retro Show with Brian Anthony Davis and me, the Let's Ride with Jeff Hartman, which is a great show, the Live Mic with Michael Beck. There is Stat Geek with Dave Schofield. So please check all those out. Check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website where we bring you commentary, film breakdown, news. Anytime an old Steeler returns, like Vince Williams the other day, Juju a few weeks ago, Tyson Alualu, we're there to bring it to you. As we like to say, it's your one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. And as I was saying earlier, welcome to everybody in the live chat, including my good buddy Terry T Money. He's a legend. He's a longtime Pittsburgh sports fan. He's from the area. He's a Pitt season ticket holder. He's a Pitt alum. He goes to all their football games when he can, pre-COVID, of course, and basketball games. A big-time fan. He ushers at Pirates games, Penguins games. He goes to Steeler games. He's a big fan. And welcome to everybody in the live chat. Cree X, Steelers Pittsburgh, Javier More. And since I did it already when I didn't realize my sound was off, I don't want to go through all that again. But I love you all, so thank you for joining me, and thank you, Todd Fury, for letting me know that I didn't have sound. It's one thing you can always count on with the live chat or the comment section. They're always ready to let you know when things aren't going well, and they're always keeping you on your toes. So thank you. And here's Monica S, and I'll get this out of the way right away. And he wants to know, or she wants to know. I don't know if it doesn't really matter. You're a frog according to your picture. But anyway, Monica wants to know, Tony, how did you become a contributor for Behind the Steel Curtain? It's what the fans want to know. I didn't know they wanted to know that. I think about 2 minutes ago, they wanted to know why I didn't have sound. But I became a contributor back in 2010. I was actually doing some research for some old Steelers games for my own personal blog that never got traffic. But I had just started writing, and I was looking for research on old Steelers games, and I stumbled upon Behind the Steel Curtain. I started writing in the fan post section. I did that all season. It was fun. In many ways, it was my most fun, or my funnest, poor grammar, year that I ever had writing on Behind the Steel Curtain. I was just a fan writer, which is what I am now, basically, still. But it was so much fun. And after the season, that was the year they went all the way to their last Super Bowl, if you remember that year. A week after that Super Bowl, that loss to the Packers, Super Bowl 45, Michael Bean, who was the original editor, the founder of Behind the Steel Curtain, he asked me if I wanted to be a main writer, and I've been doing it ever since. I didn't think it'd be 11 years, but here we are. I'm having a great time. It's given me so many opportunities, obviously writing and now podcasting. I've had articles that just really exploded, and I'm really proud of that. So, and it's given me it's made me a better writer. It's made me a more knowledgeable Steeler fan, sometimes begrudgingly or grudgingly. So I'm grateful for that. So thank you for that question. So enough patting myself on the back. I don't want to get a big head, but I appreciate the love. So thank you for that. Thank you for the questions. So the first thing I want to get into tonight is what I think was the biggest news of the week, and that was the re-signing of veteran inside linebacker Vince Williams. I believe that was announced on Wednesday, and I think it became official yesterday or today. But anyway, Vince is back for at least one more year, and to me, I think it's great. You know, it was sad when he was cut last month. Not a surprise. I mean, he was owed a good bit of money for where he was in his career and where the Steelers were in their salary cap situation. He was I think he was owed $6 million, and I think they saved $4 million by cutting him. So it wasn't a surprise, but it was still sad because he was such a great personality, and to me he was a great story. A former 6th-round pick. He was thrown into the fire his rookie year because the Steelers were kind of decimated inside linebacker after Larry Foote was hurt in week 1. They didn't really have much depth going into the year to begin with. So you lose your veteran starter in week 1, and it was devastating. But they threw him in there. He started 11 games. It wasn't all great, but it was a great learning experience for him. And you know he was behind Lawrence Timmons for a while there, and not long after he got actually, I take that back. He wasn't behind just Lawrence Timmons. He was behind Ryan Shazier and Lawrence Timmons, because Shazier was kind of surprisingly, he was a great prospect, but nobody knew they were going to go for an inside linebacker in 2014. And they drafted Shazier, and Lawrence Timmons was a longtime veteran. So he was basically, he had all that experience in his rookie year. And over the next few years, he was behind 2 really great inside linebackers, and Shazier, who was all world at that point, and Timmons, who was he used to be a great athlete earlier in his career, but he had turned himself into a wily veteran by that point. So it was hard for him to really get a lot of reps on defense, but he contributed what he could, and he was a special teams ace, and he bided his time. And by 2017, the team had moved on from Timmons, and he started alongside Shazier. Unfortunately, Shazier had that devastating injury that year, but Vince Williams, he remained a starter over the next 4 years, and he had a nice career here. And if that's all it was, he could have been proud. He could have walked away proud, but thankfully he's back. And there was some speculation at the beginning of the week, thanks to kind of a cryptic, I guess it was an Instagram picture by Avery Williamson, that Williamson was going to be re-signed. But that as of this podcast, that has yet to happen. I don't think it's going to happen now, not with Vince Williams in the fold. But at the beginning of the week, there was talk that he would be coming back, and I was happy with that. I think Williamson is a great veteran, and heck, he had 100 tackles last year between the Jets and the Steelers, so that would have been great for depth, or if he would have won a starting job. But just because of his long-time career here, I'm happier that it's Vince Williams who is that guy. And I don't know what he's going to do as far as 2021. I don't know if he's going to be a starter again. I don't know if Robert Spillane's going to build upon his sort of his debut last year. He was here year before, but really didn't contribute on defense. But it was kind of his defensive debut after Bush got hurt, and he really had a great accounting for himself. Made a great accounting for himself when he was in the lineup, and then he got hurt kind of at the end of the year. So hopefully Spillane will be able to improve upon that. But even if he doesn't, I think they're better. They're going to be better off an inside linebacker because you're going to have 3 guys now with starting experience, a solid veteran in Williams, and 2 young guys in Bush and Spillane. And obviously Bush he's such an integral part of that defense to have him back in there. And I think whoever plays next to him, whether it's Williams or Spillane, he's going to make them a better player. Just like Shazier made Williams a better player when they were together in 2017. So whoever's next to Bush is they're going to be able to be that ferocious run stuffer that both of them are capable of being, both Williams and Spillane. I think we saw that last year with Spillane with the hit on Derrick Henry, that famous hit in October. And of course, we know Williams certainly loves to lay to wood, and he's a pretty proficient pass rusher for being Vince Williams. I mean, he's people consider him to be a step slow for his position, and he's poor at coverage, or at least he's below average in a lot of people's eyes. But I mean, he's racked up 17 sacks over the last 4 years. So, I think whoever is starting next to Bush they're gonna be a better player because of him, and whoever the backup is, they're gonna have a solid backup in my mind. And you have UG3, who still his potential is still untapped, mostly because of injuries. We don't know. A lot of people were excited about him and his athleticism coming into the 2019 season, but he really hasn't had a chance to display that yet. Maybe he never will. Maybe that was all just draft hype and post-draft love that we like to shower on a lot of these guys. But you have UG3 and Marcus Allen's basically a linebacker now. They signed Miles Killebrew. He's kind of like a hybrid safety inside linebacker, even though he's mainly a special teams guy. But so I think they're going to be solid as far as depth at inside linebacker, thanks to the addition of Williams. Depth was a major concern in free agency, and now heading into the draft. There's a lot to be concerned about. It's at various positions when it comes to depth and even starters. But I think now with the addition of Williams, I don't know if it's going to preclude them from drafting an inside linebacker. Who knows what's in their heads, right? I mean, who knows? I mean, they might have their eye on Micah Parsons for all we know, and they might trade up to get him. Who knows? They might love Zavin Collins. They might grab him in the first round, and we don't know what they're thinking. But at the very least, they're much better off at inside linebacker than they were a few days ago. So I'm happy about that. So that's the first topic. And let's see what else if we have any comments or questions from the live chat while I'm waiting to hit my next topic. And Patricia Costanza, I'm not even going to try. I'm sorry. I'm not good at pronouncing it. But anyway, she asked, is Josh Dobbs, is he officially back? I believe he is. What does that mean? Everybody wants to know what that means. I don't really know what it means. It doesn't mean anything significant at this point. It's just another arm. They're obviously not going to go into 2021 with four quarterbacks. So it doesn't mean that. It just means that, when you're, let's be real. I mean, as much as I've been an advocate of Mason Rudolph, he really hasn't taken the bull by the horns over his first 3 years as the backup to Ben. So, you still have, there's still room for competition for that backup spot or even the third string spot. Nobody's position is safe as far as the backup quarterback room is concerned. I mean, maybe Mason Rudolph's safe going into 2021. I don't know, but certainly for the third string job, it's up in the air. So it's just competition, right? A camp arm competition. Josh Dobbs is obviously pretty talented. He knows the system. He's been here for a while. Yes, it's going to be a slightly different system with Matt Canada running things as the offensive coordinator, but maybe that's better for a guy like Dobbs. Maybe he can utilize him better. He's obviously more of an RPO quarterback than anybody that they have on the roster right now. So maybe he can come in and thrive. You just don't know. I mean, you don't know where you're going to, like I keep saying, you don't know where you're going to find your next quarterback. It might be in this draft. It might be somebody on that roster who saw Duck Hodges coming 2 years ago, right? So you just never know. So he is. I believe from what I read today, he is officially back. So my next topic is about James Conner. I'm going to touch on that briefly. He was a free agent for a few weeks there. He went like 2 or 3 waves, certainly all the major waves of free agency, without signing a contract, and he inked a 1-year deal, I believe. I believe it was a 1-year deal with the Cardinals. So he'll officially be another member of Pittsburgh West, and I wish him all the luck in the world. I think he's a great guy. I love his story. I was a big fan of his at Pitt. I'm a big Pitt football and basketball fan, but certainly was a huge fan of James Conner, and I knew he had the potential to be something pretty good when he came in. I knew he could contribute when they drafted him. A lot of people were like, why did they draft him in the third round? They just drafted him because of his story and because he's a Pitt Panther and because of he's kind of a local kid. But I remember my brother and I talking about him after they drafted him. And we said, look, he's good. I know he's good. We saw him play at Pitt for 3 years, I think, or 4 years. So I think the Steelers have got themselves a pretty good player. And, his only issue was his health. Everybody knows that. He just could not stay healthy for a prolonged period of time. When he was here, he had so many long stretches when he was unreliable and, he just out, he just couldn't stay in the lineup. Nobody ever, said that he was Le'Veon Bell or a all-pro running back, although he was a Pro Bowler in 2018. Nobody ever accused him of being that, but I think it was obvious that he had the ability to be a pretty productive back. When he was on his game, he produced. So, I think if he would have stayed healthy when starting in that 2018 season when he took over for Bell, I think he'd still be here today, and I think he'd probably be a star in this city. But it just didn't work out for him, and that was because of health, and that bug brings down a lot of people in the NFL. A lot of people succumb to injuries. That's just how it is. So, I wish him all the luck in the world in Arizona, and in a lot of ways, I think a change of scenery might do him some good. He's, as long as he's in Pittsburgh, or as long as he was in Pittsburgh, he was always going to be, James Conner, the cancer survivor, the former Pitt Panther, kind of local, being from Erie, PA. So he was always going to have that kind of extra pressure playing here, whereas in Arizona, it's still going to be a story. People are still going to, it's still going to be part of his story, but I don't think it's going to be as prevalent as it is here. In Arizona, he'll get to be James Conner, the running back first before anything else. And hopefully he thrives and put together a nice career for himself. A lot of people are already suggesting that he should have re-signed here to be the backup, but I don't think he's ready for that. He just played he's only played 4 years, basically 3 if you count all the games that he's missed with injury. So he's not ready at this stage of his career to admit that he's a backup. I think he wants to still prove that he can start in this league, and maybe he'll get that chance in Arizona. So best of luck to James Conner. So on that note, I want to see if we have any comments or questions about James Conner or anything else that I may have missed. Here's one from Jeff Dunn, draft related, of course, and he says, "Do not take a running back in the first round." If you asked 100 people, you'd probably get 50 people saying definitely take a running back and 50 people saying don't take a running back. That's just how the draft is. So for every person saying do not do that in all caps, there's somebody saying do that in all caps. See. Here's one from Owen David, and he says, I gotta go. Here's the rebuttal, sort of. And he says, gotta be a running back in round 1, especially after losing Conner. So there you go. See what I mean? It's 50-50. So on that note, I will close out the first half of tonight's show, first half of this episode of Steelers Brunch with Tony. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, please stay with me. I'll be right back after a short break. If you're listening on an audio platform like iHeartRadio, whatever other ones are, Spotify, anyone that you choose, I thank you for listening to this part, and please download part 2 of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I will be right back. And welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, Tony Defio. thank you for joining me. Thank you for sticking with me on in Facebook and on YouTube Live. And thank you for downloading part 2. I have some more things I want to get off my chest, so to speak, and take some questions and comments. And did I say Steelers brunch, George Teston? I might have said that. It's all right. It's Friday night. You know what I mean. It's all the same. But if I said that, obviously it's not brunch. It's 9 o'clock at night or 9:30 as I'm talking to you right now. Boy, you guys never miss anything. Anyway, let's see what we have here as far as comments and questions before I move on to my next topic. And this is one from Thanks Mean Joe, and he asks, who do you like as a starting running back today, Tony? You mean for the Steelers? To be honest, I'm okay with all 3 of the guys that are the top prospects. Najee Harris from Alabama, Travis Etienne from Clemson, and Javonte Williams from North Carolina. I'd be perfectly fine with any one of those guys. They're all great prospects. There really isn't a whole lot that differentiates any of them as far as I'm concerned. They all play for major programs. Obviously, Alabama and Clemson have been far more successful than North Carolina, but it doesn't really matter. It's still a high-level college football in the ACC, North Carolina. So I'm not worried about that. So I really don't have a preference. I think it'll be interesting to see if one of those guys is there and he's the only one left. What do they do? Do they take him, or do they hope that he'll still be there in the second round, which he probably won't be, or do they have their eye on another running back that they feel that they can get in the second or third round? So, and that brings me into some draft talk on the second half of the show. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with this series, this draft series. It's an NFL Film / NFL Network production, and it's called Caught in the Draft, and it chronicles some famous previous drafts. I think I've seen 7 so far. 74, 75, 85, 94, 95, 04, and 05. I've watched all of them, and I think they're all fantastic, and they're all enlightening. And I think the 74 one I just found on YouTube last night, Thursday night, and it was basically the main theme of that production, as far as I'm concerned, was how, or I shouldn't say the main theme, but the thing I took away from that was how very little teams valued draft picks in those days. It's certainly not like they do today. Teams were just, half the teams in the draft or in the NFL were more apt to build their team through veterans and just trade all their draft picks away. Like George Allen, Washington's coach at the time, he was notorious for trading all of his draft picks away. You remember the Steelers from the 60s, or maybe you don't remember that, but you're aware that the Buddy Parker, those coaches, they could have cared less about draft picks. They traded so many of them away for veterans that were kind of on their way out, or just named people at that point that had nothing left. Bouncing back to 74, the Oilers, the 1974 Oilers, they finished 1-13 in both 73 and 74. But in 1974, they decided, this is before the draft, they decided to trade their first round pick and their third round pick to the Cowboys for just a couple of average players. One was a wide receiver. The other one was Bubba Smith's brother, the famous Bubba Smith. Just average players. And obviously the Oilers being so bad, they didn't realize at the time, but they had the number 1 overall pick. So that they lost out on the number 1 overall pick. The Cowboys, who were a perennial contender, they had just won the Super Bowl in 71. And all of a sudden they had the number 1 pick in the draft in 1974. And they used it to pick Ed Too Tall Jones. That's how you stay on top. They kind of took advantage of the time. They were a lot like the Steelers, the Cowboys. They once Chuck Noll came here in 69, he decided, look, we're not going to get rid of these draft picks anymore. We're going to build from the ground up. When you're getting these veterans from other teams, basically you're getting other teams' problems. We're not going to do that anymore. We're gonna bring these young football players in, and we're going to teach them how to play the way we want them to play. So the Cowboys and the Steelers, in a lot of ways, were alike, and the Cowboys were really innovative when it came to evaluating the prospects. They were the first really to utilize computers and data and numbers. They were kind of like pioneers in that regard. And of course, the Steelers were pioneers with Bill Nunn, the legendary scout, who was kind of an entree into Southern small black colleges, and that's how they acquired so many legendary players like Mel Blount, John Stallworth, Donnie Shell, Mean Joe, L.C. Greenwood. I mean, the list goes on and on. I can sit here all day and name players. Ernie Holmes. So yeah, I mean, basically back then you had kind of a weird dynamic in the NFL where so many teams were they believed in building with veterans, like the Dolphins in the early 70s, who, I mean, they were an expansion team in the late 60s, and I just assumed that they built those great teams through the draft, young players, but only 27 players from their Super Bowl teams were draft picks, were original draft picks of theirs. So that's pretty interesting that teams felt that way. And you had teams that felt that way, who were just giving away draft picks. And then you had teams like the Steelers and the Cowboys and even the Raiders, who really valued the draft. So that was pretty interesting. And of course, they went into the thing with how conflicted Pittsburgh was with, should they draft Lynn Swann, the big school, the big name receiver in the first round, or John Stallworth, the unknown player from the small school in the South, Alabama A&M, I believe. And they took Swann, and thanks to some shenanigans on Pittsburgh's part where they wouldn't let anybody see the Stallworth's workout film, he lasted to the fourth round. They got him, and of course there were 5, now 6 with Donnie Shaw. I guess this production was produced before Donnie Shell was elected to the Hall of Fame. But there were 6 players, including Shell, in that draft, that NFL draft, the '74 draft, and 5 of them were Steelers. So it's pretty amazing. And it talked. If you watch some others, like the '94 draft, that was famous for the Mel Kiper, Bill Tobin clash. Who the hell's Mel Kiper? A lot of people said it online today. I think Bill Tobin was like the first person to say that publicly. Because Mel Kiper, the Colts were in a bad way back then. They were always drafting in the top 5, top 10 every year. And he was adamant that they needed a franchise quarterback. And the 2 guys that were at the top of the list that year were Heath Schuler and Trent Dilfer. And instead of that, they drafted Marshall Faulk, which I think they had the 3rd pick in that draft, or the 2nd pick. And he was like, how could you do that? They need a franchise quarterback. And of course, he was wrong about that. Marshall Faulk's in the Hall of Fame. And then I think they had the 5th pick. Yeah, they had the 5th pick. And Heath Schuler was already gone by then. And Trent Dilfer was still there. But instead of that, they picked Trev Alberts. And he was like, this is why they're always drafting so high every year. He was so adamant that they made a mistake. And then they interviewed Bill Tobin. Chris Mortensen interviewed him, and that's when he, who the hell's Mel Kiper? He sits over there in Baltimore. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Who is he to tell us who we're supposed to pick? He's an outsider. Well, as it turned out, they were both wrong, because Trev Alberts he had a nothing career. He was just a nothing. I think he injured, whatever. I think he lasted 3 years before his career was over. Trent Dilfer was an okay quarterback. He had a nice career. He made a Pro Bowl. Obviously, he helped the 2000 Ravens win the Super Bowl. When I say helped in quotation marks, because I think Cliff Stout might have been able to quarterback that team to a Super Bowl. That's how good that defense was. But he certainly wasn't worthy of a top 5 pick. That's for sure. So these guys are just going at it. I don't even know if they've ever patched things up. I don't even know if they talk today. Bill Tobin and Mel Kiper, but they were publicly fighting over these players, and they were both wrong. And I think that's a nice lesson for all of us to learn today. And that's, like we spent all these months like fighting with each other, and your picks are garbage. No, your picks are garbage. you don't know what you're talking about. I had this guy 12th on my board. How can you say he's not and then you look back 5 years later and those players you were arguing about had maybe okay careers. Some of them were absolute busts. So that was a pretty interesting one. And of course, I'll just, touch on one more, and that's the combine and how one player, Mike Mamula, in 1995, he was at Boston College. Back then, they called him an outside linebacker / defensive end, whereas today that would be known as an edge. Somebody who's kind of too small to be a defensive end in certain formations, but in other formations, he's an outside linebacker. He's an edge. Like in some formations, he would be a defensive end, a lighter defensive end. And in the 3-4, he'd be an outside linebacker. That was Mike Mamula. And he was basically projected to be a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick. But he trained specifically for the drills in the combine. He hired trainers. He trained for months to get prepared for this because he knew people, put a lot of weight in these results. And he killed it. He had like a 4.58 40 time. He bench pressed like 26 times. I mean, it was crazy. And he went from being a mid-round pick to being the 7th pick overall by the Eagles, who traded up out of the 12th spot to get him. And he was basically an average player. He had a nice enough career, but certainly wasn't worthy of the 7th overall pick. And the Eagles passed on Warren Sapp, first ballot Hall of Famer. Like Tony Dungy described him, this is Joe Green you're passing on. The Jets passed on him because there were these rumors that surfaced at the 11th hour about failed drug tests, wherever they came from. I don't know, but so many teams passed on Warren Sapp, including the Jets, and their fans were famously, beside themselves. That famous, like the one guy's like covering his face, like he just found out his house burned to the ground, But they were right. You passed on Warren Sapp to get Kyle Brady, who was an okay tight end, but certainly wasn't, a generational talent. And the Buccaneers wound up with both Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks in that draft. It was amazing. It was amazing that they got both of those players. And those guys, along with Simeon Rice, John Lynch, Rondé Barber, I mean, they went on to help them rebuild their franchise and win a Super Bowl ultimately. So it's amazing, some drafts, yield you nothing. Others change your entire franchise. It's such a, as we always say, a total crapshoot. So you can find those episodes on YouTube. And if you're into the draft, which I know a lot of you are, I think you'll find those pretty interesting. They're like 45 minutes long. It's just great stuff. Just great stuff. Like like the 85 draft. How close the 49ers came to making a trade with the Bengals to move up 3 spots to draft Eddie Brown instead of Jerry Rice. Although I think they still would have drafted Jerry Rice. I think Bill Walsh I think he just loved him. He loved Jerry Rice, and he wasn't gonna. But at the time, Eddie Brown, Jerry Rice, and Al Toon were considered like interchangeable, like the running backs of today. And coming into this draft, like you can't distinguish one from the other. And yet Jerry Rice is arguably the greatest football player who ever lived. So, and Eddie Brown was an okay receiver. Al Toon was pretty good, but they certainly weren't Jerry Rice. So you just never know. But check those out if you ever have a chance. And those are my topics for tonight. Now I will take some questions before I say goodnight. And here's a comment from Cree X, and she says, first round, second round, I want them to be starters, whoever they pick. Well, that's the idea. I mean, that's when you're picking in the first and second round, you're looking for starters. If not right away, certainly sooner rather than later. You want those guys to start. And here's one from Eric Pereira, and he asks, what if Javonte Williams is the only available running back left at 24? Do you take him? Yes or no? That's a great question. That is a great question. And it all depends. I don't want to be a cop-out, but it all depends. Who else is there? Is Creed Humphrey there, the center? What if he's there when he probably will be there? And they need a center just like they need a running back. What do you do there? What if there's a stud tackle that slides like David DeCastro? He is a guard, but he slid to 24. Nobody expected him to be there. Like, what if it's the one from Virginia Tech? Was it Darashaw? What if he's there? I mean, it's I don't know. I might have to go with the tackle. The quote unquote draft value at that point. But I mean, if you feel like you can get a really good tackle in the second round, maybe, or the third round, because it's a lot deeper than running back, maybe you take Javonte Williams. We'll see. But it's a great question. I mean, and we're going to find out in a couple weeks, less than 2 weeks. And here's one from Ryan O'Toole. And he asks, Tony, do you see Big Al returning, or will they decide that after the draft? That was one of Jeff's questions, right? Yeah, it's one of his 6-packs. I don't see him returning before the draft. No, I think if they do bring him back, they're gonna wait till after the draft, because I think they went out and they signed Joe Haig, who can possibly start for them if need be, if Zach Banner or Shooks don't improve. But then again, maybe they draft somebody. If they draft somebody, then I don't see him coming back. But I think if they do make a decision on him, I think it'll be after the draft. Although I've been surprised before. I didn't expect Vince Williams to be back, and here he is. I didn't expect Tyson Alualu to be back, and here he is. I didn't expect Juju to be back, and here he is. So it might happen tomorrow, for all I know. And what else we have here? Here's one from Kenneth McNair about Javonte Williams, about the Eric Pereira question. He says, "Yeah, I'd say yes, draft him." That's Eric. That's Kenneth McNair. So there you go. There's so many possibilities, and like I keep saying, this draft is so intriguing because, like, in our minds, some of these positions are needs. Like I just mentioned, tackle. As far as a lot of us are concerned, that's a need. I certainly think it might be, but we don't know how they feel about Zach Banner. They signed him to a pretty decent deal. If he plays the next 2 years, it'll be worth $9 million. That's a lot of money to pay somebody that you don't believe in. So they might like him a lot. They Joe Haig, they might really like him and the versatility he brings, and they might love Shooks. And we're thinking, they have to draft a tackle in the first round. And they might be thinking we could wait to the third or fourth round. Cornerback's another one. We're thinking maybe they need to draft one early, but they might absolutely love James Pierre. I know Jeffrey Benedict loves James Pierre. If there's 2 or 3 people in that organization that feel the same way, maybe they feel he could be their starter in 2021 as on the outside. So you just never know what they're thinking. We could talk till we're blue in the face about what we think, and we can look at all these mock drafts and the big board and everything under the sun. But I mean, we're never going to know what they think. And even when they say stuff, you don't know if you should believe it or not. That's just, there's just so many things that, teams are always trying to throw other teams off their scent and what they're trying to do. So it's that's why people find it intriguing, the draft, because it is such a crapshoot. If it was more predictable, I don't think it would be as much fun. If we didn't sit here for months and argue about it, and I know I just said, learn from Bill Tobin and Mel Kiper. I know I said that, but it's not going to happen. We're not going to learn from that. But if we didn't get to sit here and argue about it for months, it wouldn't be as much fun. If it was so predictable, I wouldn't have just told you about 7 shows to watch about previous drafts, right? 7 NFL Films productions to watch, because it is such a fascinating thing. Here's some names that from the 85 draft: Steve Calabria, Frank Reich. Remember Frank Reich? Obviously, Randall Cunningham. He's a legend. Steve Bono. These guys were part of the quarterback class from 1985. This is 1 year after Marino set the world on fire with 48 touchdowns. He set a record, right? And what do you have, 5,000 yards too for the Dolphins? So a lot of people were looking for the next Dan Marino. but they weren't looking like they do now. I mean, people recognize how important quarterbacks were, but I don't think they were trying to build them up like they do today. Like if these guys were in this year's draft, some of them would probably be first round picks, because that's how much importance is placed on quarterbacks now, even compared to 1985 when it was still really important. I think Randall was the first guy picked. And to be fair, Bernie Kosar was really a part of that class, but he went in a supplemental draft to Cleveland because he basically didn't want to play for the Vikings. I think a lot of players didn't want to play for them back then because they were cheap and there wasn't a free agency. So you basically were attached to a team forever until they decided to get rid of you. But that's how it worked back then. So he was in the supplemental draft and he went to the Browns. And Doug Flutie would have been in that draft, but he went to the USFL. So you probably would have had some quarterbacks picked in the first round, but none got picked in the first round that year. Randall Cunningham went in the second. And Frank Reich and Bono and those guys, they went like in the middle of the round. Calabria was a 9th round pick. He was from Colgate. Thought he had the size and the arm to be the next Marino. Never happened. So it's pretty interesting. And here's Dave Shipley, legendary Dave Shipley. And he's late. He says, "I'm late. What's up, BTSC family? Welcome, Dave." Let's see what else we have here before I call it a night. Live chat's kind of acting slow, but that's okay. Here's another one from Eric Pereira, and he says, if I can get it up here, is the 5th round pick? Oh, I don't know. I mean, you know how Steelers drafts are, right? I mean, we always go into every draft talking about needs they have to fill, or not fill. I hate that word because you don't really fill any need, at least not right away. It takes time before you really realize if you filled a need. Address a need. We always say they have to address this position, that position, that position, that position. And then maybe they do in the first round. But then by the second round, they're drafting somebody like, why are they drafting another receiver? Why are they drafting an edge? What's going on here? So I don't know. If it were up to me, I'd say you address, not in this order, but running back, O-line, tight end, center, cornerback, but they might go out and pick an edge for all we know. Not in the first round. I don't think it's going to happen, but in the second, third round, and it's funny. You want to know how valuable pass rushers are in the NFL, and we talk about quarterbacks, but I was writing down, specific team needs. Each team, I was, in preparation for our draft on Monday, the one with the writers we're going to do on the Hangover on Monday, and I swear, like 24 of the 32 teams, one of the needs was edge. That just shows you how valuable edge pass rushers are, the outside pass rushers. So, quarterbacks are valuable, receivers, running backs, but I think, like a scout said a number of years ago, or an executive, you pay the quarterback, you pay the guy who rushes the quarterback. That's number 2, so pass rushers are so valuable and teams are always looking for them. And as much as I don't think they need to do it because I like Alex Highsmith, it wouldn't shock me if Pittsburgh drafted an edge rusher, meaning an outside linebacker for them and their scheme in the second, third round. It wouldn't shock me at all. So on that happy note, I think I will call it a night. It was a fun show. Sorry about the technical difficulties in the beginning. It was my mistake. I'm only human, as the song goes. I don't know who sang it. It was from the 80s. Brian would know that. And sure enough, Cree reminds me that I'm freezing up. I don't know what's going on tonight, but sorry about that. But those things happen when you're on the internet live. And here's one from Russ Obenstein. He asked, "What time is Monday's draft?" And just to be clear, this isn't the community live chat mock draft. That's the following week. This is the one with the writers like Michael Beck, Brian, me, one of the guys from Touchdown Under. This isn't the community trip, but it'll be around 8:00. That's usually when the hangover comes on. So roughly 8:00. So please stay tuned. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm sure one of us, me, will make some picks of people like, what the heck? This guy doesn't do his homework. I have been doing my homework, but it's just not as long as all the other people. So I might have some puzzling picks. So please stay tuned for that. And I'll take one more from Ryan O'Toole since he was nice enough to ask. I probably don't even know this one, but he asked, what changes are you expecting with Canada running the show other than not being predictable? Well, a lot more motion, like you saw last year when he was more of an influence on the offense earlier in the year, a lot of that kind of stuff. Other than that, I'm not the guy to answer those questions. Jeffrey Benedict might be able to answer that. He's a really good expert when it comes to that kind of stuff. As far as, but I'm sure he's going to emphasize running the ball more. As far as predictability, I mean, I wouldn't say that too quickly because it doesn't take long for fans to start accusing coordinators of being predictable. That's just the nature of the job. So I expect him to do implement a lot more motion offense into his game plans because that's what he specializes in. That's what he kind of. I don't know why they went away from that last year, other than maybe Ben wasn't comfortable with it or the line wasn't up to snuff. I don't know, but I expect at least that a lot more motion offense. So other than that, I don't know. Tune in on Wednesday nights to the Curtain Call. Ask Jeffrey Benedict. He really knows his stuff. He'll be able to help you answer that question. So on that note, I'm going to say good night. You guys have a great night. Excuse me. You're always awesome. And I will talk to you on Monday on The Hangover with Brian and the gang. You guys have a great weekend and go Steelers.